here we are at the end of the day, me and co-host Gary Nolan. We're going to talk about home rule counties in the state of Florida, how they work, try to educate the public about them, talk about what happened in Columbia County CRC processes this year and what they're sending to the ballot. Maybe we can explain them a little bit so people will understand them. So for starters, there's like 20 counties in the state of Florida who are home rule counties. What home rule basically does, it allows the people of the community to determine how their government will govern. So it gives you way more say in certain things that the statute that governs don't allow. So you can put restrictions on county managers, county auditors. There's a lot of things. Now, you can't do anything to violate state law, but you can certainly make things more stringent. You can dictate certain policies. So having a home rule community is an outstanding thing. So there are some counties in Florida, up to 67 counties, that are large counties that are home rule. If you read their charters, they get pretty complex, but they've outgrown. They're way beyond where we're at. So in theory, as the charter commissions convene and do their work, you take into account where you're at as a community and you adopt certain policies or certain rules or certain parts of the charter you want to amend so that you can adapt to the change that's coming.
Right.
So in Columbia County, they do it every 8 years. Some counties do it 10 years, some do it 20 years. That's how often they do it. So back in June of 2019, the statute says that the Board of County Commissioners will appoint 11 to 15 people to serve on the CRC.
So basically, this allows each of these types of counties to kind of tailor their community into the way they are.
No question. That's exactly what it does.
Customize.
That's right. That's right. But in order for that to work, the process has to be fluid. So in years past in Columbia County, it never actually worked that way. So if you take the statute 125, I got a copy of it here so I can read it and I don't misspeak to it. The board will appoint 11 to 15 people to the board. They come out of the county. Nowhere in the statute does it say, like Columbia County did it this year. Well, you're supposed to have, there's 5 commissioners, 15 people. So we need 3 people from each commissioner's district. That is not what the statute says. So the way it should be done, and I'm hoping that one day we'll evolve to doing it the right way, to where people in the community who have an interest will submit a request to serve. Then that request is submitted to the Board of County Commissioners and they approve them, no matter where they come from. Now, some logic would be, well, you want somebody from every district, and that may be, but the problem is that typically CRC members are kind of handpicked a little bit, So then you can kind of control the information that goes out, what's going to be looked at, that kind of thing.
Who's controlling that?
Well, I think mostly commissioners, because they're the ones that has to pick them. So each one, like this time, it come up that each commissioner had to pick 3 members and 1 alternate. Now, nowhere is that road, but that's what they did. Now, it turned out still not to be the case because I was on the CRC, and I didn't live in the district, the commissioner that appointed me. So it's still on its face don't work that way, but that was the effort. So what it says, and this is the most important part of the charter, it says the Charter Commission shall conduct a comprehensive study of the operation of county government and of the ways in which the conduct of county government might be improved or reorganized within 18 months of its initial meeting, right?
Yep.
Which, now there are some in
That's
the
kind of
community.
like an audit, right?
Kind of, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are some in the community that come back, because that's what the CRC did this time, first time ever. The chairman, who did an outstanding job because he knows nothing about politics, he don't know nothing about the process. He was just a regular guy who worked for the community, did an outstanding job. So he formed committees, and which is the only way you can achieve the goal, right?
Yep.
So in order, the ones in the community says, well, you shouldn't have committees. You're not supposed to do this kind of intensive study. Well, that's exactly what it says you're supposed to do. Beyond that, my question was, well, explain to me how the CRC is going to move the community forward if your idea is all we're supposed to do is take the existing charter, read it line item by line item, and determine if it needs to be amended. Where do you draw the information from to make that freaking designation? That was asinine to me. That was people who didn't want you investigating and doing a comprehensive study of the government is what that was.
They don't want you to know where the skeletons are.
Yeah. So, in any event, there were 15 people appointed, and I mean there were some fine people put on this board, people who really cared about the community, truly wanted to give back. And so they started. They had an operations committee, a finance committee, an administrative committee, and a charter compliance committee. And what the Charter Compliance Committee did was to say, okay, here's the charter as it exists today.
Are you following it?
Are we freaking following it?
Yeah.
That was theirs. Now, I happen to have served on the Operations Committee and on the Charter Compliance Committee with Ron Foreman, who was the chair of that committee. And they put in the work. The committees I was a part of, they put in the work. They studied, they met, they had real discussions about real issues. Of course, later on, politics got in the middle of it, so it kind of did what normally would happen.
Always does.
So one of the leading things that kind of made things go south in the end, before we get into what they actually come up with, was the board, either by not knowing, not studying, not putting in the work, for whatever reason, they appointed the county attorney to represent the CRC. Well, there's two problems with that.
Isn't that a conflict of interest?
That's problem number one.
Okay.
Right. Now, that became an interpretation of, well, is it a conflict or not?
That's like a couple getting a divorce and they get the same lawyer. And it's like, wait a second.
That's right. So my position was simply that the county attorney cannot unilaterally decide if he's in conflict or not. He's being put in a bad position himself, right? The second problem is that the statute don't allow the Board of County Commissioners to do it. They overreached. The statute says that the CRC has the ability to hire and pay for their own attorney, which means that there has to be a process, just like regular purchasing policy, and we will have an attorney for the CRC who is not representative of any other part of the government, so that it's at arm's length. So that makes perfect sense.
Checks and balances.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So them things right there began to be where it kind of broke down. But they did the work, right? So the process goes further than that. So now all of a sudden, committees are meeting. Public records requests are being submitted. They're being returned. All these things. So each committee does their own work. Now, what the process allows for is this. What Chairman Lane did is he says, okay, we want to present two things to the Board of County Commissioners. One is a finding, and one is a ballot question. So that if in our due diligence that we were doing, if we found an issue that we didn't feel like warranted a ballot question or an amendment, we would present it to the Board of County Commissioners for their review, for them to look at it and say, hey, yeah, I think we should do something about this. So that was the context that process fell under, right?
That's the other reason right there that I can see having a attorney that is disconnected from who you're presenting this finding to.
That's right. And that's exactly right. So there were things that we found, right? that we were going to present. Now, in order for them to get to the Board of County Commissioners, right, you have to take them back to the board. So we're in committee.
Right.
We're all sitting here. We're in a committee. The committee says, hey, look at here. We got these 6 things we're going to send back to the CRC as a finding. Or we have these 2 things we're going to recommend back to the body of the CRC as a ballot question, as an amendment to the charter. So it goes back to the CRC. That's got to get out of committee. If it gets out of committee, it goes to them. Then it's up to the CRC body as a whole, whether they as a whole, they as a whole feel like, yes, that should move forward. So when I got off the CRC, that's where it was at. So there were issues that we had located, and I actually got a copy of some of them. I'm going to go through these briefly, and then we get into what actually got to the board. So in the operations committee, we actually sent, this here is a copy of what went to the attorney and come back. The one was we found that the clerk of the court, who is also the county auditor, wasn't doing their job. There was a PowerPoint presentation that says, here's all the duties of the clerk of the court or the county auditor, because the county auditor works as the Auditor General of the state of Florida does for school systems. The county auditor serves that same exact capacity for the county. So the county auditor is the check and the balance to the Board of County Commissioners. They weren't doing it. There was no post or pre-audits on contracts or agreements. There were just a multitude of things.
By doing that, who does that benefit? By, or should I say, by not doing? Does it?
The reality is, it didn't benefit nobody. By him not doing it, just wasn't doing the work.
Okay.
So I think that you take the Board of Commissioners that exists today, they weren't privy to that. When I served on the board, I wasn't privy to some of these things. Right. Not only that, we found that the finance director, who is supposed to work directly for the clerk of the court, was drawing a paycheck from the Board of County Commissioners. Wasn't even working for the clerk of the court. Beyond that, the rule stated along these lines that the county auditor will employ a third-party auditor who will come in and audit the Board of County Commissioners.
Yep.
He will present that audit to the county auditor, who will then in turn submit the audit to the Auditor General and the Board of County Commissioners. That ain't how it was happening. So even when I was there, it didn't happen this way. I didn't know it, though. So what's supposed to happen, what is happening, and even today, is the Board of County Commissioners contracts with a third-party auditor who audits the county, and he sends the audit to the Auditor General. The county auditor don't play a role in that process at no level. So them are the things that I don't think it was done to benefit any one individual. Certainly not the Board of County Commissioners, because I'm certain they don't know about it. I think it was just, here's an easy way for us to do what we're doing without having to create any shockwaves.
I'd like to know how that all began, because there's a reason why that person wasn't working for the auditor and wound up working for the Board of Supervisors. That's a really weird thing. Why?
Well, I will say that it's my understanding once this finding come out and it was talked about, all of a sudden that person went back to working for the county auditor.
And this is the other thing. I mean, as a ex-county commissioner, wouldn't you see that as an unnecessary payroll? And that would be a great thing to cut.
Ain't no question about it.
And so there's a reason why that person somebody benefited from that, because there's no way in hell that the county commissioners would have put that person on the payroll if they didn't either have to, or if it wasn't benefiting someone or something.
So in my own mind, now that didn't go nowhere, because the clerk of the court at the time contacted the attorney for the CRC in Tallahassee and said, hey, by the way, we get to do it the way we want to do it. And her finding, she didn't have no finding for it, because she said she didn't want to create a wave politics again, right? So in any event, the other thing, too, is the attorney for the CRC kind of failed to mention to anybody on the operations committee that she was also the attorney for the Clerks Association. So her firm had a direct relationship with the clerks. So she ain't fixing to piss off nobody. Of course, we didn't know that, right? That was one.
And she's not fixing to represent you as fully as somebody who was disconnected completely.
That was my feeling. The other was audit requirements for discretionary surplus taxes, determining how costing of projects went. This was an important one. Now, none of them that I'm telling you now ever made it to the Board of County Commissioners. Now, they're all privy to it. But these issues that I'm bringing up was never sent forward. Never sent forward. So the second was, so let's say that the Board of County Commissioners does a capital improvement project, right?
Right.
And let's say that I'll use an example. Same one I used when I found it out, because I didn't learn this till I was doing my due diligence on the operations committee. The circumstance that I questioned was this. The county currently is doing a restoration project at Rum Island today. My question to the finance director was...
Off of Santa Fe, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So my question to the auditor was, okay, this little old lady walks up in here into your office and she says, ma'am, can you tell me how much money the county is spending of taxpayer dollars at Rum Island? I said, what do you tell her? She said $187,000. Well, that kind of took me back because I know the real number. I said, but it's $300,000. She said, yeah, but they only are going to show the 187 because anything that's using county resources has already been budgeted, therefore it's not accounted for. I said, so your answer to her is not the 300, your answer to her is the 187. She said, yeah. Well, I knew that was wrong. So there's a statute that is 125.011. I go and pull it. Well, the statute clearly says that all costs will be for capital improvement projects will be accounted for.
For accounting purposes.
All
right?
of them.
How do you run your business?
Yeah, right? So then I begin to kind of figure out that, so let's say another case was end of the year shows up and you got all this money left over.
Right.
And county manager calls up county a commissioner, says, hey, your district's going to have $800,000 to spend. Where do you want to spend it? He says, well, I'd like to put in a retention pond over here in Fort White or wherever it may be. So let's say that the cost of all the structures is $50,000. The cost of all equipment and labor is $75,000.
And they are not going to do what they did with that other project.
That's right.
I promise you that. So it
comes out that they're only spending $50,000. So
Right.
if they're $800,000, $50,000 is audited and took from them.
Yeah.
The other $75,000 is on the house because it's already money that's been budgeted in the annual budget.
Only in government.
Yeah, which flies in the face of the statute.
Yeah.
Another one was the county engineering department. So that for me was a pet peeve because when I was on the board, and actually I got it. We're going to talk about them because it feeds into what is a ballot question. So the county engineer is a professional licensed engineer. He does not currently answer to the county manager. He answers to a department head. So policies and procedures in the administrative code, there is a department for the engineer. Yet he don't function as a department. The role he plays is minimal. So when roads are determined, what roads will be paved or all these other testing that goes on, he really don't play a role in that. So one of the things was we need to have a county engineer that answers to the county manager, the decision maker, if for no other reason. But one, he has the expertise to actually do it. No one else in the county does. But he holds a license, and he should never be put in a position that he could put his license at risk. That's how he feeds his family. So our thoughts was we remove him from the political process. Now he can say what he needs to say, and that's the end of it. That didn't make it out neither. The other one that come from here that did make it to a ballot question, which we're going to talk about in a second, is about department heads. That's just a few of the things that we actually found. We found instances where like timesheets were submitted as a public records request. we looking at them, and immediately it jumped out to me and another guy. Timesheet was for declared emergency for FEMA money. They had a guy makes $10 an hour. The timesheet reflected $13.69 was his burden. That's what his actual cost was. Well, I can't work a $10 an hour guy for $3.69. It's more than that. And I don't pay FRS, retirement. I don't pay health insurance. And I still can't do it for $3.69.
Or comp or?
None of that. I can't do it. Time out. Oh, here we go again.
Yep.
So I go to the finance director and I said, hey, look, how do y'all work this guy? Well, in that calculation did not include FRS, did not include health insurance, and they didn't have an actual cost of workers' comp.
It's an arbitrary
It was an arbitrary number.
Yep.
The actual number turned out to be $18 and something.
And so they lost money.
Absolutely. So that was the whole point. So wait a minute now. Now, here's the real problem. That's an county auditor issue. It's not a Board of County Commissioner issue. So the responsible party to ensure that that's done right is the county freaking auditor.
Where was he?
Where was he?
Right.
Yeah. So you can't blame the Board of County Commissioners.
Yeah, well, actually, you can, because they should have kicked it back upstairs or, downstairs or wherever this person is.
But see, they wouldn't even be privy to that.
Our responsibility.
See, they wouldn't ever been privy because as a commissioner, you will never see them timesheets. So there was no data. Had I not specifically got the timesheet and went and asked the question, I would have never known.
So who sees the sheets?
Supposedly the county auditor. So I don't know. All right, so here's where it's at. Now, here's where it's at. So the first amendment to the charter going to the people to be voted on in November is the department head appeals. So roughly, here's what it says. If you're a department head, you're hired by the county manager, you're fired by the county manager. What the rule that exists today in the charter says is that, hey, if that department head gets fired by the county manager, he can appeal his termination directly to the Board of County Commissioners, which do not have no role to play with him at no level because, one, they can't interfere. They can't direct him at no level. Can they direct him?
How does that work with the right to work state?
Well, here's the thing. There's all employees of the county have rights.
Sure, but that's to the
this
department
is an additional
head,
right.
Correct?
That's right.
Or to HR. Everybody has an HR
everybody.
department. And everybody has a department head. And that's where that decision should be made or not made.
That's right. So it took the ability of the county manager away for him to actually discipline his department heads, because if one of them had a really good relationship with the county manager, county commissioners, he wasn't about to try to fire them.
Right.
Now, no one has ever done that. No one ever appealed to the Board of County Commissioners for their job. But it's not as much about nobody's been fired. It's because nobody will get fired. There's an instance where an employee of the county who fell under this rule jumped over a table in a meeting and assaulted another county employee. He didn't get terminated. He got a year's home pay and retired. The reason was because of that rule. So the amendment on the ballot is that everybody who works for the county manager, which is everybody, all have the same rules. A department head don't get a rule that's beyond the rule that the lower level people have. Everybody plays under the same rules. That absolutely needs to be voted on and passed. The second thing coming up,
real quick on that. That's why we have a court. If somebody's been fired because of, let's say race or, just because the guy's a jerk or whatever, there's protections. And then that's where you involve the proper legal team to fix your remedy. But
that's right. In the charter, it also says that the county manager be reviewed annually with a performance appraisal by the Board of County Commissioners. The last time that happened was in 2011. I participated in that one. Since then, it's never been another evaluation done on a county manager by the Board of County Commissioners. And that's the problem with that. This actually comes to the Charter Compliance Committee, because when they're reviewing the charter, they say, hey, they're not in compliance with this. Because both the contract the employment contract that the county managers have with the Board of County Commissioners specifically says he will be evaluated annually. The charter directs that he will be reviewed annually. The ballot is not only does he got to be reviewed annually like he's supposed to, now in April of every year, that annual review is made a public record and said to the record in a public meeting. So now his review has got to be stated in a public forum. So that needs to pass, because that in itself will change a lot of things.
That's also like a legal thing too, because if you never put these reviews out, how am I doing, and you want to get rid of them because he's a derelict or she's a derelict or she's just not doing their job, all they have to do is get their lawyer to say, how are we supposed to know that? You've never done a review. This process has never happened.
No question about it.
And he or she is locked into this position forever, because if you don't ask HR, man, you don't do your reviews, your annual reviews to a employee, you're asking for major trouble.
We also found that not only was he not getting reviewed, others under him wasn't being reviewed either.
Snowball effect.
Yep. The third thing going on the ballot is the ethics code. In 2017, I think it was in March maybe, the Board of County Commissioners on their own accord came up with some kind of an ethics code. Don't have no teeth in it. It's not an ethics code. It just says that word. So with that being said, there's going to be on the ballot that there'll be in the charter that the Board of County Commissioners will have an ethics policy. And even in that, what the board got, the citizens won't see, was a recommendation of what that ethics policy should be.
This is that part where you really get to customize your county on the way the people of the county are.
That's right. So what it really truly is going to work down to, if the citizens vote to pass the ethics thing, and there's commissioners I know that should be in jail. They're not in jail because the Ethics Commission in Tallahassee.
Here in this county.
Yeah. The Ethics Commission in Tallahassee is not necessarily designed to get people in trouble. It's just not. So that's the last thing, which in my mind is the absolute most important one.
Who conducts that ethics committee?
Well, the board has to determine that. The way it was recommended was that if a complaint were to be filed, it would be filed with the county attorney. And the county attorney would then follow action as deemed necessary, whether he held a probable cause hearing, however he decided to do it. The last one is the most important one. It's called year-end funds. So that one there says, in most part, this is the one that's got the most, of all of them that went up, this one has the most teeth in it. Has the most benefit to the taxpayer. And it was surplus year-end funds with respect to any surplus arising from the excess of estimated cash balances over the estimated amount of unpaid obligations to be carried over in a fund at the end of any fiscal year. All such surplus should be transferred to any of the other funds of the county, and the amount so transferred shall be budgeted as a receipt to such other fund. Now,
wow, that could change that at the end of the year where the money comes.
That's right. So what happens now is, and there's typically always $3.5 to $7 million left over.
Right.
And the money comes from several revenue streams. The largest of is that by state law, all counties, they can only budget 95% of their revenue.
Total revenue. Reserve.
You got to have a reserve.
Yep.
So 5% of the budget makes up a large chunk of that. Beyond that, you have certain state revenue sharing programs, sales tax sales.
Sure.
At the beginning of a budget cycle, them are really estimates. You don't know what them numbers are. But them numbers, in large part, are undervalued. Probably to some degree they should be. They're undervalued. So at the end of the year, we estimated the budget we're going to collect $1 million in sales tax. We collected $1.3 million.
So that 5% changes real fast.
It all changes real fast. So what this rule says is, okay, all of that money now has to roll over into next year's budget. You don't get to go and have special capital improvement projects at the end of the year because you happen to have the money. You got to roll it over. That's a really big one. Now, there was a case.
So that money gets rolled over. Just to clarify that, Jody, is the idea is for that money to get rolled over so you can budget the next year.
Next year.
Not finish this year.
That's right. It makes the budget process more transparent. That's what it actually does.
Yeah, and that changes the whole idea of, raising gas taxes or any other. Yeah.
That's right. It changes everything.
Yeah.
This was a case that happened when I was on the board. Actually, this is from 2012. There was projects that were listed. This is actually the minutes from that meeting. So there was a list of roads that were being proposed to be paved, and they encompassed $4 million, $4,035,000 to be exact. So they took the $4 million and divided it amongst 5 commissioners. You get a phone call that says, "Hey, Jody, I got $850,000. How you gonna spend it?" So they come up. The road that somebody picked for me was Steely Drive, and I said, "No, we ain't doing it." So there was a discussion about it, and a commissioner decided to accept it, the recommendations of the county to pave them roads. It was seconded by another commissioner. Then I said, this is in the minutes, says, Commissioner Dupree said that he would be in favor of spending money to resurface roads which were inspected and prioritized by the county engineer according to county need.
That's right, because you can pave it, but it doesn't mean it's going to stay that way.
Yeah. Reiterated his comments made during the budget season that if the current infrastructure, which the county has already invested in, is not properly maintained, it would cost twice as much to repair in the long run. Commissioner Dupree said that before he could vote to approve spending taxpayer dollars on paving new roads, he would first need to hear the county engineer report on the greatest road needs. He also noted that local tax dollars should not be used on Bishop Road, as this road qualifies for state funding through crop or scrap programs. The motion carried 4-1 with Commissioner Dupree voting against the motion. So what I ended up doing is I went to the county manager and I said, you tell the county engineer to go find the worst roads in my district, because I'm not going to give up $880,000.
Right.
So I said, I'm not going to pick them. I'm not going to pick the roads. But I want the county engineer to go find the worst roads in my district and slate them to be repaired. So we didn't pave no new roads. We spent that whole money
fixing
existing infrastructure.
It's called infrastructure, right? Yeah.
So that's pretty much, and that's a summary of the CRC, how it worked. It just ended in July. What I just said will be on the ballot in November. I hope they all pass because they're all very important.
Sure.
And maybe people will get more educated about it, and in the future, the Board of County Commissioners will do more diligence on how the board is created, set certain policy to make sure it functions correctly. 10-4?
10-4, man.
All right. Good to see you, buddy.
Yep.